on the drive, goes inside the floater. Scoops it up. Booker brings the boom.
Love hearing that because it means it's time for the Thursday Run Pure Sports Up to Lock show, especially when we're 8 minutes late because dumbass me forgot to hit the go live button. But we're live now, DC. 8 tasty games on this Thursday night slate. Tell the people, how are you doing? We already know because we heard it 8 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat it all. My feelings were hurt a little bit. CW89 here. I didn't even notice that we weren't live. We were live for a good 5-6 minutes there.
Yeah, we would have kept going. Don't make me go watch CW89. Yeah.
Yeah, don't go make me watch the competitor Stochastic show. I'm like, man, I didn't know I was that boring in my first little monologue to start the show. And then I looked, and we're not live. So we are now. 8 games to talk about. A few less minutes to do it, but we'll cut off the introductions, and people don't need a DC life update anyway. So we'll get right into it.
No, you look fantastic, and now because I fucked up, I got to kiss AP's ass for a few minutes and say, AP, our guy was in chat talking about the Warriors, saying, when was the last time that we were burned waiting for Warriors news, sweet Travis? And I was saying back when we weren't live that we already have some news. We already have some value. It's an 8-game slate. It's unlikely that the Warriors news is going to, or the Warriors are going to roll out a guy that's going to be able to get in the optimal with their way that their rotations are healthy or not. Of course, we have the Heat news. That game against the Bucks going to start a little later. Jimmy Butler suspended essentially for the remainder of his time with the Heat. It looks like you were intent on celebrating the game in Paris today, but how are you doing, sweet Travis?
I'm doing good. It does make sense. No one said anything in the chat about the Paris stuff, which, of course, I figured it was a great time to go back live from Paris. So we're here. We're talking NBA. And, we're talking Jimmy Butler and the Golden State Warriors. I mean, what could be better on a Thursday, JT? I mean, it's going to be a mess of a slate. But, hey, these are the slates we thrive in, right? We can make tons of swaps. We can take advantage of the field. And I'm excited for this slate. I think there's some good plays that I'm backloaded on already. So I'm excited to kind of dive into it and, see what we can find.
Yes, these are the slates that we thrive on. 8 games, as I mentioned. And it does include, guys, the games that are at 10 and 10:30 with DraftKings. For the most part, many slates this season has been cutting off, which has led to some nice 3-game slates, late slates, things like that. Not the case. They do have an $18 with $30K up top tonight for later on, but we do have the $15 100K to first. We have an $888 for this 8-game slate. Travis, we'll get into this starting with a game that you talk about, a messy game with a lot of injury news. This is probably the place to start. Portland heading into Orlando to take on the Magic. The Magic getting healthy, which is not great for DFS, great for them as a team, maybe great for their chances to finally get back into the playoffs, maybe even make a run with how good Franz Wagner looked early on in the season before he got injured. Speaking of Franz, he is back tonight, though. Cole Anthony is out. Goga Bitadze and Gary Harris are also out, as is Jalen Suggs. Franz Wagner expected to play between 22 and 24 minutes. According to the coach, Paolo Banchero expected to play between 30 and 32 minutes. On the Portland side, that's probably the more interesting side here, guys, even though this total is 213.5. We know the Magic are going to play slow. DeAndre Ayton has been ruled out. We know that Donovan Clingan has already been ruled out, so that means Robert Williams is going to start. Anthony Simons is going to play. And Chris Murray and Toumani Camara are questionable. I mean, it starts here, Travis, with 3,200 Robert Williams with no other centers available. They do have Jabari Walker. They do have some other guys that I guess technically could play the backup 5, but he looks like pretty good value with a guy who's going to get probably a ton of minutes. What are your thoughts here on the rest of the Magic and the Blazers?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this first game because, for one, the Magic side, I don't want to play that much of. One, Banchero, he's moving up to 32 minutes. That's actually one play I think you can like. Franz Wagner only playing 24 minutes. So I don't like Franz in this spot, but Paolo Banchero is definitely in play at his price tag. So he is someone I'll definitely be looking at over on DraftKings. The other big conversation point on this slate is, what do we do with Robert Williams, right? He is clearly going to be a value at 3.2K. This is a guy that never really played 20 minutes. The question is, will he play the 20 tonight? You would assume as a starter he would, but I don't know. I see people in the chat saying he's a lock. I think he's a really good play. I don't see him as a lock button guarantee. Maybe you guys have different opinions on that, but I think he's a really good play. He's 3.2K. It's almost a min. I just do worry that this Portland team, it's not like they don't have guys they could play, right? They could easily play a Duop Reith, right? They could easily play a Jabari Walker at the 5. They can mess around and do a lot of stuff. They can go Jeremy Grant and play him at the 5 if they really want to, and go small, especially if the Magic want to do that with Banchero at the 5, which they've shown to be willing to do that. So I'm not saying Robert Williams is a bad play. I do think he's a good play. I'm sure I'll have exposure to him. I think he's a better play on DraftKings than he is FanDuel, mainly because you have 2 centers that you're able to roster on that site and the eligibility. But I'm not saying he's just like a slam dunk lock button play. I'd be curious your guys' takes. I do think at this time, I think this is one of the biggest decisions on the slate because I think a lot of people see him as the number one value that everyone's gravitating towards right now.
DC, there's also another value piece later on at the same price, which is Prosper from Dallas, who let a lot of people down last night. When I was running projections, playing with what I wanted to do, looking at what at least the most likely players to be optimal are, it doesn't seem you could spend up and get very heavy in terms of higher price players. It seems like the better builds are the more consistent across builds where you're not fitting in Jokic and Giannis. And that means that you're going to need less exposure to Williams and Prosper. Doesn't mean that they may not be good plays. It just means that I think tonight's a slate where you certainly are, at least from the start, not saying I must have one or both of these guys to win.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, no play in the NBA or sports, fantasy sports, is ever a complete lock, right? We see chalk fail every single night in the NBA. At least some popular plays don't get there. So there's always a risk. But, I mean, if we're comparing Robert Williams and Prosper, for me, taking Robert Williams all day between the two of them. I mean, we know Robert Williams, he's been in the league a long time, and he's a good fantasy producer, right? He's always produced over a fantasy point per minute, including this year, coming back from a lot of injuries have worn him down. And I don't think, man, going to your point, I don't think he's playing like into the 30s in minutes. But he did have a 3-game stretch in the middle of November there where he played 25, 25, and 24, 3 consecutive games, put up 46 fantasy points in one of those games. So we have seen it, right, where he plays a few more minutes and is able to maintain the per-minute production for a few more minutes. So I think you got to, or at least I am, kind of projecting him, 22 to 25-ish minutes, maybe a little room for a few more. But I don't think he's going over 30, but he shouldn't have to, right, given the production he has and the super low price point. Like, there's obviously a difference between a 3,200 Williams and, you get to like a 4.5K guy, right? And they just have to do quite a bit more. So I'm inclined to play Williams, especially because he does have that power forward eligibility on DraftKings. Center spots they're precious tonight, right? You're going to have to hit at center. So the fact that you can play him a power forward, I think makes him worth playing even in just this island game of the night. And I'm pretty hesitant to play people from the first game of the night when we have 8 to choose from. But Williams, I will be playing him. And then I think the only other player in this game that I'm really looking at all, probably won't get there, is Banchero. I don't want to go to Anthony Black with Franz back in. Franz doesn't have enough minutes. That just leaves Banchero as the only, I think, reasonably good play left. So pretty much just Robert Williams in this game for me.
Definitely messy on the Magic side with those bodies back, even though they're missing other people. The minute limits are enough, and also usage limit, right, guys? I mean, with Franz coming back, he's going to be working his way in. It's not like this is going to be Banchero's game to run with. So that covers it for the first game of the night. Next game of the night, interesting game here, coming off of a pretty, for the most part, ugly blowout. The Atlanta Hawks will host the Toronto Raptors. Clint Capella has been ruled out of this game. That means we're going to get a starting Onyeka Okongwu, who is going to be very popular and rightfully so against this Raptors team. DeAndre Hunter is going to play. Jalen Johnson and Trae Young are going to play as well. DC, on the Raptors side, it's only Emmanuel Quickley who is out, and Ochai Agbaji is going to be questionable for this game. Seems to me like a pretty decent spot to expect a bounce back from Trae Young as well. What are your thoughts here on the Raptors and the Hawks?
Yeah, I mean, one overarching theme of this slate is just the number of games, right? We don't actually get that many like big slates anymore, it seems like. And then there is just a ton of value, at least potentially, in the later games. That Chicago Golden State game could be just chock full of value depending on who sits in that game. So I guess I just bring that up because you do have to be careful who you play early. You need to have confidence that they're going to have a big game. I don't see anyone on Toronto I love. Scotty Barnes would be my favorite, 8,700. I worry a little bit about the upside with him. Just hasn't had the huge games that I think you might need tonight. And then I think Barrett is okay as well, but probably not going to end up on Toronto. I think Atlanta, the more interesting side, obviously specifically talk about how good center is. Okongwu, for me, kind of leads the way here. Is this his third game starting, Mangone? I think his third in a row that he started. He got the surprise start. Was that against the Knicks? Yeah. Kind of out of nowhere. Prior to that, Capella, I believe, had started every game he'd been available this year. So they gave Okongwu kind of the surprise start. He played well. They let him start again. Now, he pretty much got the same amount of minutes or close to it in those two games, right? 28 and 27 minutes. But Capella played in those games. So they switched the starting role, but Atlanta obviously thinks, right or wrong, that Capella and Okongwu are of similar, not skill sets necessarily, but similar value and like wants to split those minutes. But with no Capella, I do think we're going to see Okongwu's minutes jump significantly because his backups are guys who like literally never see the court outside of extreme garbage time. So Okongwu unlike Robert Williams, I guess, Okongwu does strike me as someone who could play 38 minutes, with Jalen Johnson and Trae Young. I don't see a reason why he couldn't do it. He's a young athletic player, doesn't have injury problems, all that stuff. So I'm in on Okongwu. He's a lock for me. First guy in my lineup tonight. Probably going to pair him with Williams and then probably going to see what waits to unfold as the night progresses.
Travis, the Raptors and the Hawks, DC with me on Okongwu. Thoughts here on him, on Trae, Scotty Barnes coming off a big night. Is it a night where maybe we see a bounce back from RJ Barrett as well?
Yeah, one of the key things to talk about on this slate is how good center is. Like DC said it before. Like that's the reason why I don't think Robert Williams is a lock is we already have two centers right here. We got Jakob Poeltl, who's clearly a good play, and Onyeka Okongwu. And one thing I always like to call out with the Raptors is I think the Raptors want to lean into playing Poeltl. Like if they could play Jakob Poeltl, like if they could play him like 36 to 40 minutes every night, I think they would, right? So you kind of hope that they kind of do the handshake agreement that we're both going to play our bigs a bunch. The one issue I think you will run into is if one of the teams is trailing and the game flow doesn't go their way, maybe they do go more small ball and it's Jalen Johnson at the 5 and they try to kind of spread it out. But we can't really predict that. That's just something I wanted to mention. I think that's important when talking about Onyeka Okongwu and Jakob Poeltl, who again are both great center plays. They are two guys I think you want to be overweight on. They provide some value too on the slate. And to your point, JT, that you mentioned earlier, I don't want to just go grab like 3K guys and then grab like a Jokic. I want to kind of live in this mid-tier a little bit more for some of these guys that have some really crazy upside. And there are some of those plays in this game, like those two centers that we mentioned. On top of that, Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett, I know me and Rubio, we've been talking about it for a little while here on the shows. These two guys are great plays because if they stay close in a game, they absolutely nuke, right? They win you a tournament. And in this modern day NBA, anyone can win, right? We saw this Clippers team almost beat the Celtics last night with a bunch of nobodies out there. I thought Snyder checked into the game at one point. So overall, we have to like these guys. Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, they're great spends on this slate at 7.7K and 8.7K. So I definitely like them. Grady Dick at 4.2K. I do think he is a really good play too. His minutes have been consistent between like 25 and 30. He's another guy that I think in this matchup against Atlanta, it's a really good one. So I'm definitely interested in him as well. You could make the case for like the Bruce Browns if you want to get a little bit different. I don't mind that. And then of course on Atlanta, like DeAndre Hunter, he's another guy that you could look at. I know he's cheaper on FanDuel than DraftKings. You got Jalen Johnson at 8.6K. I mean, I know DC's been beating the Jalen Johnson drum all season long, myself included. He's another good play. So this is definitely a fantasy-friendly game that I think you want to get very overweight on, and for good reason. I think it's got the ability to stay close, and if it does, you're going to see this game be like 130 to like 125. It's going to be an absolute shootout. So I'm kind of hoping for that. I want to get definitely overweight on this game. If I had to pick favorite plays in this game, it probably starts with the centers with Okongwu and Pirtle. And then from there, it's probably more the Raptors studs. I think it's RJ Barrett number 1, and then Scotty Barnes 2. And then I think it's Jalen Johnson 3, and then followed by Trae Young number 4. That's kind of how I would rank the studs in this game.
An Iron Mitch Snyder shout out in the NBA streets. Iron Mitch will appreciate that, especially guys coming off a tough weekend for Mitch. The Ravens, well, they are the Ravens, and that means that their season has ended once again in early January. So shout out, though. I don't believe that he jumped into that game last night, but you never know. You never know what will happen at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, Travis. We'll stick with you and move on to the next game. This is the interesting game here. Oklahoma City and Dallas, both of them on a back-to-back. Oklahoma City, a surprisingly close game last night against the Utah Jazz. And now they host the Dallas Mavericks, who lost against the Timberwolves in Minnesota last night. For this one, the injury report on the Dallas side is heavy as Klay Thompson, Dwight Powell, Najee Marshall, Jaden Hardy, and Dante Exum all going to miss this game. Isaiah Hartenstein and Isaiah Joe are out for the Thunder. Travis, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I will say the SGA stuff is interesting because I thought maybe he would just sit this game, but we have nothing on the injury report. I just wouldn't be shocked if out of nowhere they sat him, right? Just because, it's second night of a back-to-back. Again, it just wouldn't completely surprise me. So that's something I'll be like, just keeping my eyes on as we get like an hour and a half before that game locks. But overall, though, SGA, if you have the money to spend for him, great. But he is not a priority for me. There's other spends I'd rather get to. I'm not going to SGA today. Kyrie's fine at 9K. I'm not dying to play him, but I like him way more than SGA. If you force me to pick a stud in this game, it's Kyrie 1, it's Jalen 2, and then it's SGA 3 is how I would rank them. We should talk about Daniel Gafford and how great he's been. I mean, he's been absolutely phenomenal. Even at that price tag of 6.5, I still think you want to buy it. I think he's going to be in the 7K range. I know it's a really good center slate, but if you're looking for a contrarian center option, I don't completely hate it with him as an option. Of course, you got Spencer Dinwiddie as well. He could be an interesting play at 6.1K with all these guys out, could just gain a ton of usage. And then if you tell me to pick between Mr. Prosper and Grimes, my lean is Grimes. But to be honest, I don't like any of them. Like, I think these are two plays I just want to be lower on than the field. If the field is going to be high on them, I want to be lower. I don't think it's a great spot. I think this game could also get ugly. It wouldn't surprise me if it was a blowout. So I'm just staying away from this game for the most part. If you tell me, hey, Kyrie, sure, I'm happy with getting some of him. If I'm getting some SGA, that's great. But if I'm getting like 30, 40% SGA, that's a mistake. I felt that way with LaMelo Ball last night. I had 30%. I felt like the game was going to blow out and be ugly. I'm not making that same mistake again. So I'm going to be lower on plays in this game. I think that this game's getting a little overowned for my liking, JT.
DC, interesting spot, of course. Dallas, they're not good. Let's just be honest. They're not a good team. What are your thoughts here, though, as they head into Oklahoma City? Oklahoma City surprisingly played down to the Jazz. The Jazz are fully healthy, but they stayed up with them last night. Your thoughts on whether or not can Dallas do the same thing tonight?
Man, I don't think so. This is a spot where I'm just jumping off the Dallas train here. They were really, really undermanned yesterday. Managed to play well and compete in a close defeat to the Wolves. Now they got to run it back. The same guys, right? Back to back. None of the guys that missed yesterday are out. I mean, Kyrie Irving played 38 minutes. This is also, I believe, the third game in 4 nights. Gafford played 33, played 34 a couple days ago. And now they got to go into OKC, right, to face maybe the best team in the league, who's really good defensively. Just feels like a really, really bad spot. It's the NBA. Anything can happen. Dallas could win this game, but got to make some stands. And one I'm doing is I'm just not playing Dallas. They have enough guys at forward spots where I don't think Prosper is locked into big minutes here. Seeing him pop up in some of our cores by people who are better at DFS than I am, so he must be at least a decent play. But it's not chalk that I'm going to be personally playing. I'm off Dallas today. Especially the expensive ones. Really don't want to play Kyrie and Gafford. Honestly, if I was playing those guys, I would make sure to play them together because their minutes are very, very closely tied in a game. I think both of them would have to play well to reach their minutes ceiling. And listen, if I think the game's going to be a blowout, I'm not going to end up paying for much OKC either. I think, one of SGA or Jalen Williams could be interesting. We could see Dallas go a little bit smaller here at times, but I think there are better games coming down the slate. So this game, pretty much a pass for me for my teams.
Yeah, the spread there, Oklahoma City by 12, right? I would expect this to be 7, maybe 6 point spread. It just screams something that's not good. So maybe a little bit of a focus there on some of the lower priced players for the Thunder, for Dallas. Yeah, I mean, I'll have some Grimes, I'll have some Prosper, but I don't think I want to touch much else on the Dallas side of the ball. Half hour until lock. If you have questions, go ahead and drop them in. We are going game by game here. Binair, it's nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. Think the chances of a Heat game cancellation for wind are minimal. Let's say minimal chances of that happening. DC, will stick with you. Speaking of the Miami Heat, they are in Milwaukee. The Bucks are there, finally. The Heat are there. Jimmy Butler is suspended. Tyler Hero is going to play. Josh Richardson is not. Someone named Kashad Johnson is questionable for the Miami Heat. On the Bucks side, there is some news. Giannis in. Marjon Beauchamp is off injury. AJ Green is out. Chris Middleton's going to play. I'm seeing that Damian Lillard is a game time decision. I'm not sure if that's accurate. You guys will let me know. And I'm sure the community here will correct me if anything I've said is wrong. DC, thoughts on the Bucks and the Heat?
Yeah, we got bigger problems if this game is canceled due to wind conditions. So hopefully they do end up playing. I think the Bucks side, you can go to some of these guys. Again, there's not that many great spend ups today. So Giannis certainly in play. Obviously playing awesome, consistent. You're going to get out of him. I think he's, if you really, really like all this value, I think Giannis is a perfectly reasonable play. I think 2 players on Miami are particularly interesting. One is Tyler Hero with no Jimmy Butler out. And like you said, JT, I mean, probably has played his last game for the Heat, Jimmy Butler. You have to imagine at this point. So, I mean, it's Tyler Hero's team, right? I think it's kind of safe to say at this point. He's kind of the lead dog. So I think he's going to have some big games. And going up against that Bucks backcourt, Damian Lillard, is a pretty good matchup. So I like Tyler Hero. I think he's got some ceiling here, honestly, at 8,300. And then you don't see this very often. Khalil Ware obviously got some more minutes when Bam missed time, but he played so well that he forced himself into the starting lineup at a different position, right? Not just Adebayo's backup. They say, no, we got to get you on the court. You're playing too good to be the backup center. Like, again, it just doesn't happen very often where you see something like this. Dude responded. 45 fantasy points against Portland, shot 17 times. He can shoot the three. Great rebounder. I mean, I didn't know much about him, but I've watched some of him these last few games, and he looks legit. So I know he's up to 5,700 on DK, 6,100 on FanDuel. But, like, Spoelstra's not putting him in the starting lineup, I don't think, like, willy-nilly there, right? He really did earn it. No Jimmy Butler. I think he's going to keep having big games. I like this kid. So I like it at 5,700, 6,100 on FanDuel. I don't think he's by any means a lock, but I think he's going to keep performing well. So I'm in on Khalil Ware. Interested to hear where you guys end up on him, and haven't checked if he's going to be popular or not. I would imagine fairly so, given the big performances recently.
Yeah, he's not going to be overly popular, but it depends on how people view this Dallas Oklahoma City game, and I think too, what do they do with Williams? If you're playing Williams and Prosper, you're paying up. I don't, like I said, a lot of the, and not just me, but the projections, the runs I'm doing, it doesn't seem like that's the way to go. Travis, your thoughts here on the Bucks and the Heat and Khalil Ware?
Yeah, I think Ware's a great play. I think he'll be higher owned on FanDuel than DraftKings, mainly because of some of the plays and the positions and construction. But I do think Ware is a great play. Someone I want to be overweight on. Like, when I flip the cards over, if I see Ware is like 20% and I have 10%, I'm not going to be happy, right? So that's a great way to basically say, hey, that's a good play on this slate. That's someone I want to have exposure to. I will say matchup's not the easiest. That is like one thing to kind of think a little bit through, but it's not like he's the starting center, right? He's got Bam there to be able to help him out with that.
I'm a little worried he's going to have to guard Giannis and vice versa, but
yeah, slightly. But I'd rather him have Bam there than not have Bam there, if that makes sense. So I think that at least is a little beneficial, in my opinion. So, of course, the Damian Lillard stuff. Damian Lillard is definitely someone that I think you can play at 8.5K. He has upside. I think Tyler Hero, keep in mind the narrative with him too. He's a Milwaukee guy, right? He's from that area. He loves playing there, loves the Bucks. So he's definitely someone that will kind of show out for this game. I actually think he's a good play. We know the usage he's going to get is going to be strong. So I like him in this spot. Of course, it depends like who else is starting in that spot. Is it going to be a Jaime Jaquez at 5K? I typically like him when he does get the start, and I think he isn't a bad play here. I don't like Terry Rozier. He is not someone I'm dying to play. I just, that Ponzi scheme is not something I'm participating in anytime soon. So on this slate, I don't love it. The one thing I will call out, though, hey, he is going up against Damian Lillard defense. I get it, but not for me. I've seen Terry Rozier enough where I don't really want to do it. I understand he has upside, but I'm not in love with it. Milwaukee side, if you have the money to spend for Giannis is fine. He's also power forward eligible while Jokic is not, so that's something that's a little bit beneficial. But Giannis isn't this primary spend. Like, for me, I want more balanced builds. Like, I want more of these 8 and 9K guys rather than these other options at like 10, 11, and 12K. So I'm not super excited about spending up for Giannis, but I do think he's kind of a better play than Jokic because of the positions, right? That's the only reason why. If I could play Jokic at power forward, I would play him over Giannis. But I just think center is so valuable today that I don't see myself loading up on Jokic on a site like DraftKings. So overall, again, I like Ware a lot. He's someone I want to get to. If I want to get a spend in this game, it's either Lillard or Tyler Hero. And Giannis is better than Jokic today, I think, mainly because of the positions.
All right, Travis, let's move on to the next game. Sacramento at Denver. The Nuggets favored by 7.5, 242.5 total here, which is beautiful. I think it is just barely the highest total of the night. Of course, fully healthy teams here. So injury reports, this is the only game of the night where there is not a injury to speak of. Looks like an interesting game. Of course, Sacramento on a back-to-back coming off a last second win against the Warriors at home. What are your thoughts on the Nuggets and the Sacramento Kings?
Yeah. What is the spread on this game? I'm curious. Do you have it in front of you?
7.5. Denver favored by 7.5.
I was just curious because the Nuggets are playing good basketball, right? Like, it's important to take note of sometimes, like, when the league, it goes in ebbs and flows, and like we know the Celtics aren't playing good basketball right now. the Nuggets are playing good basketball, in my opinion. And I could see this game getting ugly. I do think Jamal Murray at 7-2 is definitely someone that I'm interested in. A Russell Westbrook at 6-2. Another, again, mid-tier guy that I just think has upside in the matchup. Same with Michael Porter Jr. He's 5'7". Probably should be more in that like 6'2", 6'3 range. So all those guys are in play. And, of course, I think Jokic is a good play. But the problem is I just can't get to him because of the positions, right? There's other centers that I'd rather get to, and that's just the problem on this slate. So doubt I'll have that much Jokic, which, of course, that means I'll have like no Sabonis because I don't think it's a great spot for him. I think a Keegan Murray at 5K, he can flash some upside in this matchup, and it's a cheap price. I don't mind that. With this team being crowded, do I want DeMar DeRozan at 7K? Probably not. Malik Monk, I actually don't mind him. He's been flashing a ton of upside. If I'm spending $7,000, I'm spending it on Malik Monk. I'm not spending it on DeMar DeRozan. And De'Aaron Fox, I just feel like with how crowded this situation is, at 8.4, the price is just a little too high right now. So for me, it's really looking at Malik Monk and Keegan Murray on the Kings side. And on this Nugget side, I really am looking at maybe Jamal Murray, Westbrook, MPJ. Again, more of that mid-tier construction I've been talking about all show.
DC, this is one that, again, similar to the game later on with the Celtics and the Lakers, very interested in watching this game. What are your thoughts on the fantasy plays from it?
Yeah, this is another one. I don't feel as strongly as I do about Dallas OKC about the outsized possibility of a blowout, but I'm kind of with Van Gunn. I think this is a tough spot for Sacramento. They're also on a back-to-back, played all their main guys, a ton of minutes last night. Now you go to Denver, the hardest place to play. Biggest, home court advantage, obviously, with the altitude. To a Denver team who, this seems to happen to them every year, has figured it out. I don't know how many games in a row they've won, but I think since Joker came back from that little illness, they got Aaron Gordon back. They changed up the lineup. They put Russell Westbrook. So, yeah, I mean, they've had, 3 or 4 blowouts in a row. I think their average margin of victory last 5 games is 22 points. And, yeah, they're just, again, it looks like they kind of solved their own little puzzle. And when they're really rolling, it's hard to keep up in Denver, especially when you're on the back-to-back. So, again, NBA, anything can happen, but I do think going away from this game is okay. I think there's a chance Denver does deal with it early. Sacramento maybe pulls the plug earlier than they normally would on the back-to-back, and maybe we don't see players get there. Obviously, Jokic, always a good play. I will say Aaron Gordon, he's still coming off the bench, but he is down to 4,200 on DraftKings. If you need some value, he feels relatively safe to give you 20-plus fantasy points. So I don't mind that, but, I'll be playing it. Kind of Denver rolls and maybe a lot of pieces missed from this game. I think the Sacramento guys are going to be somewhat popular. I get why, but I think it's more dangerous spot than maybe people realize.
Fair points there, especially with Sacramento on a back-to-back. The next game, guys, this is when we are 20 minutes from lock. So go ahead, drop any questions you have in the chat. We'll be working on our player pools and lineups and getting those in here before 7 o'clock. Again, we talked the first game, Robert Williams, Banchero, those are really the two guys that we're looking at from that game. Really in total, maybe an Anthony Simons here and there if you think for some reason that game stays close. The next one, though, DC, a lot of news to come in this game. And it's a team that is on the road, the Chicago Bulls. And there are some reports here that they may just blow this whole thing up. And that may mean that there are some trades incoming here in the next 7 to 10 days. Run like we're not very high on Anthony Black here. I don't have him in my pool. So that's me. I think the guys agree that there are better plays at the point guard position, especially with some of the value on the slate. For the Bulls, Ayo Dosunmu is questionable, as is Kobe White. Torrey Craig is out. Chris Duarte is out. Jamon Carter is going to play. On the Warriors side, Stephen Curry and Trace Jackson Davis are questionable. Draymond, Kuminga, Kyle Anderson are out. Kevon Looney, who played 9 lovely minutes after starting last night. Moses Moody, Gary Payton, Pods, Brandon Podziemski is back, and Lindy Waters is questionable, DC. Obviously, we need news here. It's a 228.5 total, which is high for the Warriors, a little bit lower than you usually see for the Bulls. What can you tell us without news?
It's tough, obviously, because the news is on both sides, right? So it's kind of hard to break it down. The nice thing, though, like usually when DraftKings includes a late game like this, it seems like it's oftentimes, like a standalone and you don't have swaps. I remember a week ago, whatever it was, getting stuck with LaMelo Ball, right, and leaving 2,500 on the table when Joker got surprise ruled out. Not the case tonight. You've got 3 pretty good games to choose from. Obviously, this one, and then Boston, LA, both LA teams play, and then Clippers play the Wizards. So you're not going to get stuck here if you're at all careful with it. And since you can't really get stuck, I think you got to kind of load up on this game and then, have plans. You don't need a super specific plan. You're going to have some options if you play several plays from this set of late games, which I do think is the proper way to approach this slate. For Chicago, it looks like White is going. I thought he was not expected to play, but I don't know. Maybe I misread that. Anyway, White and Dosunmu, both questionable. I mean, I think there's a reasonable chance that both guys end up sitting. Obviously, with what the Bulls are, they're just kind of hard to predict. They seem like a team that's going to sit out players on a regular basis until they figure out what direction the team is heading, right, with the trade deadline coming up here in the next month. So if they're both out, I mean, Giddey against this depleted Warriors team, I think he would be a near lock for me at 7,100. Again, if both White and Dosunmu are out, I like him if even one of the two sits. I really like Levine in this game. And then I think you could play Lonzo Ball too, more of in a pinch if those two guards are out. So I do really like the Chicago backcourt here, obviously depending on the news. And then, you can kind of say, frankly, a lot of the same things about Golden State, depending on the Curry news. Has Schroeder had a big game as a Warrior? I don't think he has. He got, 32 minutes 3 games ago against the Wizards and still couldn't put up 30.
He's been, even when starting, he's played 30-plus minutes. It's just he hasn't done a lot. No.
And they do get Pods back, but he's been out a month. So I would imagine, and with I don't know what the exact injury is. DraftKings has abdomen here, so I assume a strained stomach muscle of some kind, which I would assume that you have something of a ramp up coming back from that. So I don't know. If Curry sits, I guess on paper, probably a good spot for Schroeder. I'm a little hesitant. Buddy Hield, I think, would become really interesting at 4,500. We know he can get hot from 3, and then Wiggins too. So potentially a really good game here. It's going to be this way a lot of the season with Golden State. I think you just don't know what to do till the news comes. But I do think, like I said, you want, I think, a significant portion of most of your own teams with a few players from this late set of games.
Fair enough. Travis, thoughts here on the Warriors and the Bulls? Of course, there's always a chance that the way that the Warriors play, this game slows down, becomes an uglier game, certainly than you would expect to see with the Bulls involved. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with DC. This is like a really difficult situation to kind of navigate and figure out right now at this time, right? We're 14 minutes before lock, but one thing I do know is I kind of want to have some spots open later on. I think there are good plays later on that we can get to, right? So that's the one thing that I know I'm going to build my lineups with that thought. I will say I'm hoping the news hits better on the Bulls side than the Golden State side. I'm hoping that I get news that Kobe White and Dosunmu are out because that would help Josh Giddey, right? It would help Levine. Even Vucevic, I think, would get some more volume. He'd be nice for Lonzo Ball, who's been playing a lot better at 4.4K. And I think he would be an even better value. So this is a spot where I'm kind of hoping the Bulls are the team that I can kind of gravitate towards a little bit more. When it comes to Golden State, for one, I don't know if Curry's going to play. And if Curry doesn't play, then I have to figure out who is going to play, right? And I agree with Dennis Schroeder's fine. Buddy Hield seems like he can pop at times. You can make a case for a Trace Jackson Davis, but you just never know with Steve Kerr, right? It's like trying to figure out when Hawk Tua girl is going to come back into our lives. It's just impossible. It's like, I'm good. I'm out of this situation. I do not want to figure out what Steve Kerr is doing. I want to stay as
I don't even think Steve Kerr knows what he's going to do before the game starts. Like this,
Correct. Brandon Podziemski's back. Like, they could
Yeah.
randomly play him. Like, I want you to be a little cautious when playing the Warriors. Again, if Curry's out, yes, that's a situation where we really need to go and, like, digest it and be like, okay, Buddy Hield makes sense. Dennis Schroeder makes sense. But, like, at that point, we want to limit it, right? We don't want to just load up on it and not play some of these later plays, because I think there are good plays later on that we can get to. Yes, they're a little bit shaky. Like, the Wizards are never fun to try and figure out, but I do think there's plays there that are cheap that are better than trying to guess on the Warriors, if that makes sense.
Fair points in terms of what to do with this game later on this evening. We will move on to the next game. The next game, one that talked about a little bit, the Boston Celtics at the Lakers. Boston favored by 6.5. Boston on that back-to-back. 220.5 total here. For Boston, everybody is off the injury report, so everybody that was out yesterday is going to be in today. Anthony Davis and LeBron James questionable, or probable, as they usually are. Just have to be listed on the injury report. Vanderbilt, Wood, Hood, Scafino going to miss this game. Travis, we'll stick with you for your thoughts here on the Bulls and the Warriors.
I thought we just talked about the Bulls and Warriors, no?
The Celtics and the Lakers.
Yes, Celtics and Lakers. Yeah, so obviously I think this is a good spot for, like these are good plays, right? Like Jason Tatum, we know he's going to get up for this game if you have the salary, great. Is he a priority play? No. But you can make a case always for these guys at their price tags. Like, me and DC talked about this, I think, on a show not too long ago. Like, if you're stuck with these Celtics, they're not bad plays, right? But they're not priority plays. You know, Derek White could certainly get there at 6.8K. I don't think he's the worst play. Same when it comes to these Lakers options. I guess the one guy we don't really want to spend on is Austin Reeves in this matchup at 8K. I don't think that's a great play with the situation going on with the Boston guards that can just absolutely dominate. So definitely want to be lower on this game, mainly just okay with sprinkling in the studs. You could make the case that like a Drew Holiday at 4.7, that's just too cheap of a price tag and he has upside, but I understand the risk going into it. I'm not going to have like 40% Drew Holiday, right? If I get a sprinkle of them, that's certainly fine. But I do think of the nightcap games, the best one right now for me is Washington and the Clippers.
DC, your thoughts here on the Celtics and the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, Boston, they rested, 3 guys yesterday? And then, did they get the win? I know it was close. Yeah, they did get the win against the Clippers. But then they're like, yeah, we're all playing against the Lakers. So it's almost like, I don't know. I think Boston, good chance to roll here against the Lakers is how I predict this game to go. You know, again, Boston guys are fine. I'm with Mangone. There's a chance I end up on one of them, just, based on how the late news breaks. We just don't know how that's all going to go. So I'm really kind of okay with most of them. Tatum would be my preference if I could only play one. But, yeah, if I end up with a Pritchard or a White or even a Jaylen Brown, I'm okay with that. Just not going to be in my lineup initially. We probably need more guys to play in these later games than expected to end up on Boston. And then I'm not going to the Lakers here outside of unexpected news. I do expect all their main guys to play. So Lakers will probably be a fade. I think Boston shows up and plays well in this one.
Fair enough on that. And then the last game of the night, DC, got about 9 minutes until lock here. Washington against the Clippers, 14.5 point spread here. Clippers favored, 225.5 total. For the Clippers, everybody except Chris Dunn and Jordan Miller are going to be back and in. And for the Washington Wizards, the only guy that is going to miss here is Malcolm Brogdon. For me, it looks like you could play Zubac here. I think he's okay.
Yeah,
I don't have a whole lot of him, but I think you can play him. Outside of that, you're taking some shots, I guess, on maybe one of these cheaper Washington guys gets hot and some blowout run. But other than that, this isn't a very appealing game with all the bodies and the rotations, DC, unless you see something different.
No, I'm with you. Is this game being played somewhere else other than LA? Because both these Lakers games are listed at home.
They're in different stadiums now. The Intuit Dome is the Clippers' home that just opened up.
Yeah. I tried to play Wizards guys against, I played Kuzma against the Lakers, thinking maybe he'd show up. in that one. He was fine, but they still got blown out. I'm not going to the Wizards here. Seems like a bad spot against this Clippers team getting Kawhi back. So I'm off the Wizards entirely. Try to only play them in select spots anyway, and this doesn't seem like one of them. Clippers side, yeah, it's starting to get a little bit more crowded with Harden, Powell, and Kawhi all in there. At least over on FanDuel, you do get a discount with Harden. 8,500 feels like a good play, even with a little bit of reduced workload. But the minutes are going to be there. The matchup is fine. Harden's going to get whatever he wants against the Wizards. I mean, when you have Harden's game and their lack of defense, like he's just going to be able to get to the line or shoot an open three every possession if he wants to. So I do think Harden is a very, very safe play here. Again, not a priority, but no problem ending up on him if it does break that way. I think I might actually prefer him over, I know they're not the same position, but over a Jason Tatum as a kind of a final spend too. So I like the Clippers side some. Not going to go crazy playing, ton of these guys in the same lineup. But yeah, Harden would be the guy that I'd most likely to be ending up on tonight.
Travis, thoughts here. Final game of the night, the Clippers and the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, I like Harden, especially on FanDuel. He'll definitely be someone that I'm looking at. I actually don't even mind Kevin Porter at his price of 4.1K. And I like Zubac on DK. I think he's another good center that you can get to against this Washington team. I remember when one of my King of the Court bets that I won, it was on James Harden, and he did good against this Washington team. He could certainly cook, so I like that a little bit. The guy I just don't want to play anymore is Kyle Kuzma at 6'2". I'm so sick and tired of him. He is absolutely brutal. He is someone I'm going to try to be lower on, but I do like.
He couldn't do it against the Lakers. That was his chance. I felt like, but
I know. I do like Carlton Carrington though at 4.4. I think he's actually a good play on FanDuel. And then Koulibaly's not bad, but you got to be a little careful with these guys, right? You don't want to be too overweight on them, but there are you can take shots on the Koulibalys, the Georges, the Carringtons for their cheap price tag. There's certainly guys you can mix and match on.
All right, that does it. We'll go with the play of the day here, or two, maybe just one. Again, 6 minutes until lock. Got any questions? Go ahead and fire them in. DC, Travis, you've got the Eiffel Tower in the background. That looks like a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing in the background. Who is the sweet Travis play of the day?
Yeah, he gave us a little bit of a rough performance the other day, but I'm going back to the well. Johnny Utah's got him in his questions. I'm going with RJ Barrett. I think he bounces back in a pretty good spot. Atlanta's a good bounce back spot for him, so he will be my Eiffel Tower play of the day.
DC, who's the mom's basement play of the day?
We're really going down in the dungeon today with Josh Giddey himself. I think he gets some big minutes here and pulls a triple-double for us, Mr. Giddey.
Some would say that's your guy. Is that
That's my dude, Josh Giddey.
I put this gentleman in my core yesterday, and it was a great defensive performance. We will say that for the Pistons against our guy Trae Young. But I think Ice Trae shows up tonight. I think this is going to be a close game and a much more offensively enjoyable game for our Atlanta Hawks. And I think that Trae Young is going to play a big part in it. So we'll have the core plays are already up. There's player pools up. There will be late night cores. Everyone will be in the Discord answering questions for the next 4 minutes. And then, of course, for the rest of the slate, because that's what we do here at Run Pure Sports. For DC, for Sweet Travis, good luck to all of you in your contests this evening.